Hello and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory in for Hashtag the U-Word. It's Monday, July the 25th. This is Africa 54.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov visits the Democratic Republic of Congo on the second leg of his African tour aimed at strengthening Moscow's ties with the continent. Tunisians vote Monday in a referendum on a new constitution that critics of President Kais Saied fear will stunt the democracy that emerged from the Arab Spring Revolution. And anti-abortion groups in Kenya welcome the overturning of Roe v. Wade, while abortion rights supporters fear it could further restrict the reproductive health of women and girls.
Well, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov visited Congo Republic on Monday on the second leg of an African tour aimed at strengthening Moscow's ties with a continent that has refused to join Western condemnation and sanctions over Russia's invasion of Ukraine. African countries, which have a tangled legacy of ties with both the West and the former Soviet Union, have largely avoided taking sides over the war in Ukraine. Many import Russian grain and increasingly energy too, but they also buy Ukrainian grain and benefit from Western aid flows and trade ties. Lavrov has already visited Egypt and will head from Congo to Uganda, then Ethiopia.
Which took place in Odessa, there is nothing in the commitments that Russia has made, including as part of the agreement signed in Istanbul on 22nd July, that prohibits us from continuing a special military operation, destroying military infrastructure and other military targets. As for the targets targeted by the high-precision strikes, they are located in a separate part of the port of Odessa, in these so-called military parts of the military port, and the targets were Ukrainian military vessel and an ammunition depot, where both and-ship missiles were recently discovered. They were delivered in order to threaten the Russian Black Sea Fleet. Objective experts confirmed what we had said at the beginning. The grain terminal of the port of Odessa at a considerable distance from the military unit. There are no obstacles for the grain to start being delivered to the customers in accordance with the signed agreement in Istanbul, and we have not created them.
Well, Lavrov has already visited Egypt and is heading from Congo to Uganda, then Ethiopia. Now, for more on his scheduled visit to Uganda, let's go live via Skype to journalist Mugume Davis Rwakaringi in Kampala. Hello, Mugume.
Hello, Vincent.
Yeah, so first update is on his Lavrov's visit to Uganda. Has he arrived, and what is he expected to discuss with the authorities there?
Thanks so much, Vincent. So the Foreign Affairs Minister, Sergei Lavrov, is expected to be in the country. So far, he hasn't arrived at the place of minority, but is expected any time to be in the country. And his visit was announced by the President's office via social media, Twitter, that he will be in the country today. What he is expected to talk about hasn't been put in media, but he's expected to have meetings with the President and some government officials as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, what is known about the relationship between Uganda and Russia?
So the relationship between these two countries, Uganda and Russia, is what someone can say is a cordial relationship that has been there for a long time. As since Uganda got independence in 1962, there have been friendly countries. And most recently, in 2019, when Russia had the Africa-Russia summit in Sochi, these two countries, Uganda represented by His Excellency, the President of Uganda, Museveni, signed a cooperation agreement between these two countries. And it should be remembered that recently, when Uganda, it should be remembered that Uganda abstained from voting against Russia in the UN Human Rights Commission.
Oh, right. How are the Ugandans reacting to this anticipated visit of Lavrov to their country?
So, Vincent, the Ugandans, especially young people who are usually on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, they haven't talked much about the Foreign Affairs of Russia's Minister of Russia's visit to Uganda. It hasn't been so much, and I think this is partly because of some reports that have been in media that today, Monday, Ugandans there were some people who are organizing some protests on the skyrocketing commodity prices. And so actually, according to reports, there were some that were held in some parts of the country, although they were stopped by the police. So the visit of the Foreign Affairs Minister of Russia hasn't been so much in public domain, but it's expected that once he arrives and is being received, then that's going to change and it's going to be the topic definitely.
All right, we'll follow up after he arrives. Mugume, thank you very much. That's journalist Mugume Davis Rwakaringi reporting live via Skype from Kampala, Uganda. Well, now, the World Food Programme says it is optimistic about a UN brokered deal to reopen Ukrainian ports for grain exports. And meanwhile, Russian missiles hit the southern Ukrainian port of Odessa Saturday, triggering alarm. The deal could be derailed only one day after it was signed. At the start of an African tour, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov offered reassurances in Egypt that grain export commitments would be met. David Doyle has more.
Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov offered reassurances over Russian grain supplies to Egypt at the start of an African tour on Sunday. His arrival comes amid uncertainty over a deal signed between Russia and Ukraine to resume Ukrainian exports through the Black Sea. But on Saturday, Russian missiles hit the major Ukrainian port, Odessa. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky called the attack barbarism that showed Moscow could not be trusted to implement the deal struck just the day before with Turkish and UN mediation. Video released by Ukraine's military showed damage in Odessa. The military said 2 missiles hit the area of a pumping station and 2 more were shot down. Russia said on Sunday its forces had hit a Ukrainian warship and weapons store in Odessa. Speaking in Cairo, Lavrov reaffirmed the commitment of Russian grain exporters to meet all their commitments. In a press conference with his Egyptian counterpart, Lavrov said there was a common understanding of the causes of the grain crisis. Since the start of the war in February, Russia's Black Sea fleet has blockaded Ukraine's ports. That's trapped tens of millions of tons of grain and sent global food prices soaring. Russia blames Western sanctions and Ukrainian mines in the Black Sea for the crisis. For Egypt, it's created a political dilemma. It's one of the world's top wheat importers, with 80% last year coming from Russia and Ukraine. Because of the war, Cairo is torn between long-standing ties to Russia and its close relationship with Western powers. Russia has continued to supply wheat to Egypt, selling to both the government and the private sector. After Cairo, Lavrov will travel to Ethiopia and Uganda, as well as Congo Republic.
Well, David Doyle of Reuters fired that report. Now, for more perspective on Russia's objectives in Africa, I'm joined live via Skype by Joseph Siegel, Director of Research at the Africa Center for Strategic Studies here in Washington. Mr. Siegel, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you.
Now, Russia is not visiting Africa for the first time. In fact, Lavrov has been in some countries in Africa in the past years. But what do you read into this current visit to a number of African countries?
Well, I think we need to see Lavrov's visit as part of a broader Russian strategy on the continent. Russia is trying to do several things geostrategically. First is it wants to be seen as a great power, one that's unencumbered by the Western sanctions, one that's not isolated and free to move around and continue to maintain bilateral relations. Secondly, Russia is trying to establish some sort of enduring presence in North Africa, where it can gain control over maritime routes through the southern Mediterranean. It may be able to disrupt maritime traffic through the Suez Canal. And third, Russia is trying to reshape international norms, especially norms about sovereignty and territorial integrity, and really recasting its attack on Ukraine as a battle between the East and the West. So these are all the messages we're going to be hearing from Lavrov during his trip on the continent. Now, that Russia remains a vibrant actor and can go where it wishes.
Yes, some would say it's kind of retracing its steps back, because some of those countries, that he is visiting, they have had those relationships from quite a long time ago. But then at the moment, there are kind of a contest between Russia, China, and then the Western nations, and that Russia is trying to make sure it doesn't lose its footing?
Well, I would characterize it a little bit differently. Russia has not been that active in Africa since the end of the Cold War. It has started to resume interest in the last few years. But, the reality is Russia offers relatively little to Africa. Less than 1% of foreign direct investment coming into Africa comes from Russia. So it doesn't have a lot to offer. What Russia does offer is prestige, some political cover from international power that provides some support to often isolated African regimes, those that are unpopular and looking for further support. And so I think we should interpret the countries where Lavrov's visiting, both in terms of what Russia gets out of it, which is this perception that it's not isolated and that it remains a great power. And then from the African perspective, where Russia is legitimating countries that have come under a lot of criticism for their human rights record and their failure to democratize.
Really interesting, and we'll be reaching out to you again, definitely, for further analysis on this. Mr. Siegel, we really appreciate your perspectives today. Joseph Siegel is Director of Research at the Africa Center for Strategic Studies here in Washington. The voting is ending Monday in Tunisia's referendum on a new constitution that critics of President Kais Saied fear will stunt the democracy that emerged from the 2011 Arab Spring Revolution by handing him nearly total power. Clara Frank has more.
Monday's vote is being held on the anniversary of Saied's sudden move against the elected parliament when he ousted the government, established emergency rule, and began governing by decree. It is not clear when the results will be announced after polls close at 2100 GMT. But with little apparent enthusiasm for the vote among most Tunisians and a boycott by most parties, analysts expect a yes vote with low turnout. Under Saied's own rules for the referendum, no minimum level of participation is needed to approve the new constitution. They only stipulate that it will come into effect once the final results are published, and do not say what happens if the voters reject it. Saied has hailed his moves as the foundation of a new Tunisian republic to put the revolution back on course and end years of political resistance to change and economic stagnation. His foes accuse him of a coup. However, while nearly all major political parties and civil society organizations are denouncing Saied's unilateral approach to rewriting the constitution and the legitimacy of the referendum, they have failed to build a unified front. Disagreement and conflict was visible in protests against Saied in recent days. The Islamist Ennahda, the biggest party in parliament, participated in a protest on Saturday, Civil society organizations and smaller parties held a demonstration on Friday. A party that backed the pre-revolution autocracy held its own on both days. The protests attracted only small numbers, but rallies organized by Saied supporters have also had only modest attendance. And there has been little sign of excitement around the campaign. Most Tunisians remain focused on the dire economy and rising prices.
I have to be one of the first to vote to save our country. We have to vote yes and stand with Kais Saied because the country is on its way to collapse. I'm a businessman and I live abroad, and I came to Tunisia to invest 10 years ago. But since 2012, I've been struggling.
However, the economic decline since 2011 has left many people angry at the parties that have governed since the revolution and disillusioned with the political system they ran. Of the 3 parliamentary elections and 2 presidential elections since the revolution, the lowest turnout of 41% was in 2019 for the chamber the Saied had dissolved. A turnout on Monday far below that rate would further call into question the legitimacy of Saied's new constitution and his project to remake Tunisian politics. Clara Frank, VOA News, Washington.
The World Health Organization has now declared monkeypox a public health emergency of international concern, as it has affected nearly 17,000 people in 74 countries. The WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus says the virus is likely to continue to spread internationally. The new label is designed to sound an alarm that a coordinated international response is needed and could unlock funding and global efforts to collaborate on sharing vaccines and treatments.
WHO's assessment is that the risk of monkeypox is moderate globally and in all regions, except in the European region, where we assess the risk is high. Although I'm declaring a public health emergency of international concern, for the moment, this is an outbreak that's concentrated among men who have sex with men, especially those with multiple sexual partners. That means that this is an outbreak that can be stopped with the right strategies in the right groups.
That was WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus. And Human Rights Watch says the M23 rebel group in the Democratic Republic of Congo's volatile east has summarily executed 29 civilians since mid-June in areas under their control. The M23, or March 23 movement, rose to prominence when it briefly captured the eastern Congolese city of Goma in 2012 before being driven out in a joint UN-Congolese offensive. After lying mostly dormant for years, the group has resumed fighting. Well, we're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Be sure to watch Africa 54 Tuesday for Lino Mudu's health report. Still to come, U.S. President Joe Biden's condition improves after testing positive for COVID. But first, Heidi Adams tells us what's coming up on Wednesday's Straight Talk Africa.
On the next Straight Talk Africa, we'll take an in-depth look at Tunisia's referendum on a new constitution that would give President Kais Saied almost unchecked power. Plus, we'll have an exclusive interview with the U.S. Special Representative for Racial Equity and Justice, Desiree Cormier-Smith. She talks about addressing social injustice, human rights violations, xenophobia, and inequality. Join me, Heidi Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa.
From around the world. Let's go.
In other African news, 34 people died in central Kenya Sunday evening when their bus veered off the Nithi Bridge and plunged 40 meters into a river valley, according to local media sources. Protesters stormed the United Nations base in the eastern Congolese city of Goma Monday, demanding the departure of peacekeepers from the region. The protesters smashed windows, looted computers, furniture and other valuables, according to AFP. And the Somali parliament is giving Prime Minister Hamza Abdi Barre a 10-day extension to complete his cabinet lineup. The original 30-day timeline was to expire July the 25th. And now the U.S. Supreme Court's overturning the rights to abortion is raising concerns among activists about a domino effect in developing countries, including across Africa. Anti-abortion groups in Kenya are welcoming the ruling, while abortion rights supporters fear it could further restrict the reproductive health of women and girls. Juma Majanga reports from Nairobi.
Anti-abortion groups in mainly Christian Kenya celebrated the U.S. Supreme Court's overturning of the right to abortion in June, calling it a divine intervention.
Abortion is murder, and the abortionists are also murderers. So when I see that the Supreme Court is choosing life, that is the way to go.
Kenya has upheld the right to abortion, but only for health reasons, leading many women to seek unsafe, illegal abortions on demand. After watching her friend bleed to death from one such abortion in Nairobi, 20-year-old Diana, not her real name, sought professional help when she wanted an abortion.
I went to a good clinic and the doctor took me through the process. Now I'm fine, as you can see. I'm all well. I'm healthy and I don't have any complications.
But like many abortion rights supporters in Africa, Diana worries the U.S. top courts overturning the abortion right could encourage more legal restrictions in Kenya and lead to more deaths. The World Health Organization says 75% of abortions in Africa are unsafe. Kenya's Ministry of Health estimates 2,600 women and girls die each year from complications related to unsafe abortions. That is 35% of all maternal deaths.
There is a high rate of maternal deaths resulting due to unsafe abortions because these women are denied the right to have the safe abortion services.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump restricted funding to developing countries' reproductive health as part of the so-called gag rule against abortion. Abortion rights campaigners say that was the first sign that more action will be needed to protect the right at home.
While the U.S. has been very generous in supporting our health systems, we must be more proactive ourselves and have the right laws, the right practices that favor access to reproductive health, including abortion care.
Kenya has gradually liberalized its abortion laws to allow, in 2019, termination for sexual violence. A judge ruled in March this year that abortion care is a constitutional right and even cited the U.S. Supreme Court Roe v. Wade decision that was then overturned in June. That ruling is being challenged, and Kenya's abortion rights advocates worry the U.S. change in law might affect the final decision. Juma Majanga for VOA News, Nairobi.
The White House says President Joe Biden's condition is improving after he tested positive for COVID-19 late last week. Biden has received 2 vaccinations and 2 boosters, which experts say has helped the president ward off a serious illness. VOA's Russia Rabasade reports.
Last Thursday, the White House revealed the 79-year-old tested positive and that he likely has the BA.5 subvariant of the coronavirus that has taken hold as the dominant strain in the United States.
Hey folks, guess you heard this morning I tested positive for COVID. But I've been double vaccinated, double boosted, symptoms are mild, and I really appreciate your inquiries and your concerns.
The White House credits Biden's mild symptoms to his vaccination status.
This is a president who's double vaccinated, double boosted, getting treatments that are widely available to Americans, and has at this moment a mild respiratory illness. This is really good news. And this is both vaccines and treatments that are available to everyone. Really important that people go out and get vaccinated and avail themselves of these treatments if they get infected.
The president's physician, Kevin O'Connor, confirmed Biden's mild symptoms in a letter the White House released over the weekend. The White House determined an infected Biden came in close contact with 17 people. As of late Saturday, Dr. Ashish Jha says none had tested positive.
Obviously, all those people have been contacted. They're following CDC protocol, and we'll continue to follow them.
Biden's positive COVID test came just 2 days after a CDC panel unanimously recommended a new vaccine from manufacturer Novavax. That vaccine differs from the mRNA style widely available throughout the pandemic. As opposed to injecting material to teach our cells how to generate an immune response, Novavax is a direct injection of the spike protein itself. It's a more traditional style of vaccine, as mRNA is relatively new, and experts hope it will motivate the vaccine hesitant to roll up their sleeves for a shot. Biden's positive test comes as the World Health Organization declares the spread of monkeypox a global health emergency. White House officials say the Biden administration is considering declaring a public health emergency in response to the monkeypox outbreak. However, no final decision has been made. Arash Arabasadi, VOA News.
Well, that's our show. Thanks a lot. Have a good night.
Vladimir Putin's brutal war on Ukraine has shown us exactly where despotic power leads. So threatened was Putin by the Ukrainian people's embrace of democracy, by their rejection of corrupt oligarchs, by their desire for deeper integration with their peaceful European neighbors, that the Russian leader rained down steel and death on its neighbor, on a people he claims are his own. The world's democracies, allies in the private sector, civil society, multilateral institutions, religious and diaspora communities, everyday citizens, all of us must build on the unity that we have demonstrated in Ukraine to try to extend a broader revolution of dignity to people seeking to be free. We call on all who share our values here in the United States and all over the world to join in, to extend a revolution of dignity throughout the world.